Hi, seventh graders. Okay, so what we're doing today is a little bit of review with like markups, markdowns, but it's kind of sort of a different kind of question. And it's one that you'll see on your benchmark. It's quite challenging though, so we're going to walk through this first part together, and then you have a chance to try it on your own on the other side. So it says, each bulleted statement describes how the amount of income tax is determined for yearly incomes in different ranges. I'm just going to pause right here. Income tax. This is when people will make a certain amount of money and then they are taxed that money. And it's income tax because it's taxed on the amount of money you make at your job or your income. So the first bullet point, yearly income of $15,000 or less are taxed a flat rate of 10%. Meaning if you make $15,000, if you make $10,000, if you make $12,000, you are taxed everything at 10%. If you make a penny more than that, it's different. So it's just $15,000 or less. The next bullet point, for yearly incomes from $15,001 to $40,000, the first $15,000 is taxed at 10%, and any income beyond $15,000 is taxed at 20%. So I'm just going to write a quick example on here. What this would mean is, so let's say you make, let's put it in a different color. Let's say you make, $20,000 a year. What this would mean is $15,000 of it, so the first $15,000, would be taxed at 10%, and then you have to find the amount that's remaining. So if the first $15,000 is taxed at 10%, how much is remaining? Well, 20,000 minus 15,000 means there's 5,000 more, and so you can put 5,000, the remaining $5,000 is taxed at what it says right here of 20%. So you want to find out what's the 10% of 15,000 and then the 20% of the remaining 5,000. The last one is for incomes that are greater than 40,000. The first 15,000 is taxed at 10%. That's nothing new. The next 25,000, so the amount between 15,000 and 40,000, is taxed at 20%. And any income that's beyond or greater than 40,000 is taxed at 25%. Okay, we're going to jump into this. Trust me, I'll walk us through it, and you may have to be watching parts of this over again or like listening to something and hearing it a second time. So if you pause and rewind, that's totally fine. I would suggest doing that. So part A, Nancy's yearly taxable income is $42,560. What is the dollar amount taken out for taxes based on Nancy's taxable income? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to separate this into like the pieces. I know there's a $15,000 tax mark and a $40,000 tax mark, and then there's a plus 40,000. So we have to look at this. Are we making more than $15,000? Yes. So I know that the first $15,000 is going to be taxed 10%. And then then I need to figure out how much did that take away from the total. So if you have a total of, her total income is $42,560, and we took away right here the first $15,000 because it's taxed at 10%, what are we left with? Well, we can use our calculator, and if you haven't already, you can Google a calculator. We have $42,560 minus $15,000. Oops, I put it in my calculator wrong. 1 second. $42,560 minus $15,000. We're left with $27,560. So the first $15,000 is going to be taxed 10%. Now let's look. I have $27,560 left. If I look at the second bullet point, it says or on the third. So we're still less than, or our total is still more than $40,000. So we still have to break it into three pieces. So we have another $25,000 remaining in this in between $15,000 and $40,000. And you can see that because if I took my original amount, it's more than 40,000, and look right up here. Hold on, let me highlight it for you. It says for incomes greater than 40,000, which is what Nancy's is, the first 15,000 is taxed at 10%. We marked that right there. The next 25,000 is taxed at 20%. So that needs to be our next bracket, is $25,000. And this would be taxed at 20%. And then we have to see what's remaining, because it says anything beyond $40,000 is taxed at 25%. So if I add this up, if I add my $15,000 that's taxed plus my $25,000 that's taxed, that adds up to $40,000. But we need to see $40,000, there's still some remaining, right? She originally makes $42,560. So we need to subtract that $40,000 from it and see what she has left over. Well, she'll have $2,560 left over, which means that's the last amount. She's got this $2,560 that's going to be taxed at the highest bracket, which is up here at this 25%. Now, we need to see how much is going to be taken out of her taxes. So let's do this piece by piece. The $15,000 is taxed at 10%. So I can do my part, which I don't know. I want to know the tax. The percent, which is equal to 10%. And the whole, which is the whole in this category, is 15,000. So my equation is what is, let me make it bold. What is 10% as a decimal times 15,000. And again, if you need a calculator for this, you can use it. So 15,000 times 0.1, you're going to get $1,500. So we know so far Nancy has to pay at least $1,500 back. The next part, same thing, part. We don't know. We want to know how much she'll be taxed in this bracket. The percent this time is 20%, and the whole or the original bracket is $25,000. So we can use our equation. Part equals percent times the whole. So we need to figure out what is 20% of $25,000. We should get that is equal to $5,000. So for the first bracket, she had to pay $1,500. Now she has to pay $5,000 in taxes. Let's figure out the last one. This, she only has $2,560 more than $40,000. So just that amount that's greater than the $40,000 is the amount that's being taxed. So we don't know the tax, but we know this time that the percent is equal to 25%. And this time the amount that's being taxed at 25% is just $2,560. This is the way the government works, is if you make certain brackets, it taxes you a certain amount at lower, when you make a lower income, and then as your income gets higher, it taxes that higher amount above a threshold at a certain amount. So our equation, part equals percent, which is 0.25, times our whole 2,560. And if I use my calculator, I have 0.25 times 2,560, and that's going to be $640. Okay, it's a lot of work. So now we know what the amount she's going to be paying in each tax bracket. The last thing we have to do is add these amounts together. So we have $5,000 that she's paying, or sorry, $1,500 that she's paying in taxes, plus $5,000 she's paying in taxes, plus this $640 she's paying in taxes. And this total is going to represent the entire amount that she's paying in taxes. So this is $2,000 because I know 1,500 plus 5,000. Sorry, plus 5,000 is 6,500 plus the $640 means that she's going to pay a total of $7,140 in taxes. That is number one. Again, if you're confused on this, when you try it again, you can come back and watch this video on this part to help you out. So B is actually a little bit more challenging. It says Garland's paid $15 per hour for his job. This year, he worked a total of 1,243 hours. What is the dollar amount that will be taken out in taxes based on Garland's taxable income? First, we need to figure out how much money Garland's making. So he makes $15 per hour. He's working $1,243. So I can do $15 times the 1,243 hours that he's working. And I will get an answer of, he's going to make a total of $18,645. Now we've got to figure out how much is going to be taken out for taxes. So first I want to see, where does he fall? Does he make less than $15,000, between $15,000 and $40,000, or greater than $40,000? I see that he falls in this middle bracket, so I'm going to follow the rules based on this. The first $15,000 is taxed at 10%, and any income beyond $15,000 is taxed at 20%. So I know that his first $15,000, so if I take away $15,000 from this amount, his first $15,000 is taxed at 10%. Now I need to see what's remaining. So I can figure out what's remaining in the second bracket by taking his $18,645 that he made in the year and subtracting the $15,000 that's taxed in the first bracket. And we are left with $3,645 that's going to be taxed in the second bracket. And this is going to be taxed at 20%, because anything greater than $15,000 is taxed at 20%. Okay, we don't have anything beyond that, so we're not worried about the third bracket at all. This first one is, we want to know what amount is he going to pay? He's paying 10% of $15,000. We already did all of this work up here. There's no sense in doing it again because we've already solved it up here. We know that the amount, that 10% of $15,000 is going to be $1,500. That's how much Garland's going to pay in taxes. This amount, however, is going to be different because here I have $3,645 being taxed at 20%, and up here I had the entire $25,000. So we can figure out our part, which we don't know, percent, which is 20%, and the whole, which this time is $3,645. Set up my equation, part equals percent, which I have to write as a decimal, times the whole amount. And we figure out what that is. And I'm going to pull out my calculator. 0.2 times 3,645 will give me an answer of $729. So this is the $1,500 is the amount he's taxed in the first bracket. The $729 is the amount he's taxed in the second bracket. And we want to know how much his total is taken out in his taxes. So I'll take the first amount of $1,500 and add the $729 to find out how much how much tax is completely taken out, which gives us an answer of $2,229. This is the amount that Garland will be paying in taxes. And this makes sense that it's lower than Nancy's, right? He only makes a little more than $18,000 a year, so he's paying about $2,000 in taxes. Nancy makes more than twice that, so she's going to pay more than twice that amount. She's paying up close to a little more than $7,000. The next part is exactly like this part. If you need to rewatch it, I would suggest it. There's a lot of moving pieces, but good luck.